Hello, I'm Tara Brabazon. I'm the Dean of Graduate Research at Flinders University, and welcome to vlog 135, Tasks and Time. This vlog has a very interesting origin, as most of them do. I had a wonderful student in my office, the fabulous Sue, who was sitting right there, and she expressed profound worry to me. And I was stunned at this because she's nearly finished her PhD. Woo! Come on, yeah. So she's nearly finished her PhD, but she was worried. She was agitated. She was anxious because she knew she was probably within 3 months of completing, but she didn't have a clear sense of what was left to finish before she submitted and how long that would take. So of course that fear of the unknown was creating anxiety and concern. Does any of that sound familiar? Yeah? Well, in today's vlog, it's going to be a very simple tip and trick for you that if you're in that environment, so you think you're just about finished within 3 months of submitting and you're going, what's left to do? Oh, wow, I'm losing control a bit. If that's you, this vlog will solve your problem. But similarly, if you're sort of on the way through in your candidature, in your first year or your second year, and you feel that a chapter is getting a little bit out of control, so a big, bulky, baggy chapter, and you're thinking, I can't see my way through this chapter, how am I going to finish it? Well, if either of those scenarios are you, yes you, well today I'm going to solve that problem for you. So the vlog today has two parts. Firstly, I'm going to put in place some definitions of task orientation and time orientation, and then I'm going to show you how both task orientation and time orientation can be used in a staged fashion, an iterative fashion, to get that thesis completed or indeed get that difficult chapter completed. So to the definitions, let's start with task orientation and time orientation. Now, both these phrases come from industrial sociology, a very interesting subdiscipline of sociology that, needless to say, is burgeoning at the moment with the transformations to work. So these terms describe different ways in which labour is disciplined, the ways in which work is organised. So task orientation, and knows the prizes here, easy definition first, task orientation focuses on the completion of a task. So that's the outcome. Task orientation was a pre-industrial way of conducting work. And really it's best explained to you today in relation to agriculture and farming patterns. So work is focused on a particular task, and that task is continued until it is finished. So let me use an example for you. So you are milking a cow. Bless. Now you don't say, oh, look, it's 10 past, I'll stop milking the cow now. You continue milking the cow until the cow no longer has milk in that particular cycle. So task orientation. If you are pruning grapevines, you don't say, oh, look, it's 4:30, I'll stop. You continue that task until those grapevines are pruned. So task orientation, as you can see, is often a model that is connected with nature, with the seasons, with working from dawn to dusk. So there is no regard for artificial units by which time is segmented, so seconds, minutes, hours. Tasks are completed, and there's really no separation between work and leisure. A fascinating way of organising your time, your life, your tasks. So task orientation is defined in opposition to time orientation. Now, time orientation emerged during the Industrial Revolution, where workers were paid for their time. So that's when we started to discuss a working hour or the working day. So clocks were then used by employers to measure the worker's contribution. So it was no longer about the completion of a task, but completion of time. And if you think about it, the language that we used from this period changed radically. So instead of time passing, which is a task-oriented way of thinking about time, time was spent. How are you spending your time? Think about how the language transformed. Really fascinating. So workers clocked in and clocked off. So the working day was measured by time, and workers were paid by time, not by task. So in response to these changes to work, all sorts of other variables in our daily life started to transform so we could be disciplined by the clock. So think about how schools were and are run. Schools exist, have always existed really, to prepare us for the workplace. Not in terms of content, nothing we really learn in school is meant to intrinsically prepare us for the world of work. It has a much more complicated function than that, because what school teaches us is the discipline we require to manage a day at work. So in schools, that's why we have to sit in rows, and our timetable is constructed, and our body and mind is organised by the bell or by the siren. So what we learn through school is the value of time and how we can discipline ourselves within the confines of the clock. So that means by the time we enter a workforce, we're very, very used to a watch or a clock organising how our time is, I'm just going to use the word, spent. And we value work on the basis of time, not on task. Isn't that fascinating? So great work was done in this area by the legendary historian E.P. Thompson. Can I say one of the truly great heroes in my life, one of the great scholars. He was stroppy, he was wrong a lot of the time, but he was productive in his wrongness, and I love him for that. E.P. Thompson is best known for the writing of The Making of the English Working Class, his truly, truly remarkable book. But in 1967, he wrote an absolutely stunning refereed article in history in the journal Past and Present. So this is 1967, where he provoked the history of time in his piece Time, Work Discipline and Industrial Capitalism. Wow, how fantastic is that? So since this key article, and by the way, everybody who talks about time and task and work invariably refer back to this article. That's how important it is. Wow, that's amazing. But so time and task orientation have been used in a series of different ways. And when I was preparing for the vlog this week, it was fascinating to see how the literature has moved since the 1960s. And intriguingly, in the last 5 years, time orientation and task orientation are being used as models of leadership. If that isn't a synonym of what's going on in our contemporary culture, I'm not sure what is. So that's a fascinating literature in and of itself. But it is important, I think, to remember both these terms socially and intellectually, because they describe a different way of being disciplined, a different way in which work is controlled. Now, let's talk about universities. Now it gets crunchy. So, universities are oddly positioned between time orientation and task orientation. We need to remember basically that universities are medieval institutions, early modern institutions. Remember, we had Oxford and Cambridge colleges that were formed in the 12th century. So we are dealing with a university that is pre-industrial, and therefore is motivated by task orientation. So if you think about it, writing, research is a task-oriented activity. We work until the experiment is finished. We work until the field work is conducted, or the article is finished, or the book is finished. Now, teaching is different. Teaching is time-oriented. It's organised around, obviously, a timetable. And the reason a timetable exists is so that we all turn up at the same time. But universities right through really the first half of the 20th century, teaching was very different from how it is now. And I mean, the Oxbridge tutorial, I think, is a great example of how pretty groovy teaching was handled. And also, there was a lot less teaching in universities than there is now. And this is where we get to this cool old guy, Socrates, or as Bill and Ted referred to him, Socrates, rock and roll. So like Socrates, he is the dude, he's the guy that created Socratic methods, a series of questions. So Socrates wandered round ancient Athens barefoot, fantastic, basically asking questions, and students sort of trotted about and followed him round Athens. Okay, so this was not organised by a timetable. He wasn't disciplined by any clock or any sense of time. The only thing he was disciplined by, except obviously the hemlock at the end, bless, was his Mrs. Xanthippe. What a legend she was. Now, she was a tough woman and Socrates was really frightened of his wife, so he didn't need a clock because he had Xanthippe. Basically, we all need one of her. So universities, therefore, predated the Industrial Revolution, and therefore the industrial discipline that was required for, say, the mechanised loom or the assembly line seemed a long way from what we were doing in a university. So now, right now, we're left in this liminal, this in-between space about how we in universities organise work. So we have time orientation in universities. Teaching is organised by time orientation, so are all our meetings, and we have a Microsoft calendar in place that pings every 15 minutes before we go to a meeting. I have to turn all my computers off, by the way, before I do these videos each week, because the damn thing pings all the time. So I'm disciplined by the ping where am I meant to be? I'm meant to be somewhere where I'm meant to be. So time orientation. But the issue is also that research requires task orientation. We cannot complete research by the clock. It is a series of tasks that we have to complete until they start to come together, whether it be creating data sets or creating interpretations and outputs like conference proceedings, respect to my engineers, you rock, but also books and articles. Okay, so we have some definitions in place. Why does all of this matter to you? Well, let me tell you. If you're desperate to finish that thesis in 3 months, if you think you're close, or you're desperate to find a way to finish this chapter that appears to be getting away from you, let me give you the strategy to fix it and get you to that outcome. And what we're going to do is use both task orientation and time orientation to get you to that moment of success. And by the way, feel free to use this strategy, share this strategy, do whatever you like with it. It is mine, I've developed it, so knock yourself out. So let's start with you, your thesis, and task orientation. So what I need you to do, whether you're dealing with the end stages of your thesis or you're dealing with that difficult chapter and you just can't see your way clear, what I want you to do is get a really, really big bit of paper and list randomly, be relaxed with it, list all the jobs, the tasks you've yet to complete in the thesis or the chapter. So just list them for me, all the bits that are left to do. And think about those tasks, and the trick I would give you is make them bite-sized. I'll tell you why in a second. But so, for example, don't write on your big bit of paper, finish the literature review. What I want you to do on that big bit of paper is think about the 10 sections of your literature review and write those terms or phrases down. So break down your tasks to a nice bite size for me. So once that first stage is complete, you've got the sense of what tasks do I have to do to get there. That's fantastic. So the next stage I want you to do is look at all those tasks and clean the list up a bit. Make sure it's accurate, make sure you know what you referred to 10 minutes ago, and then I want you to rewrite the tasks in an ordered fashion. I need you to get a new really big bit of paper and I need you to put 3 columns on that piece of paper, 2 big columns and a little tiny column at the end. And I need you to head those columns task, time, and tick. Task, time, and tick. So here we go. What I need you to do is organize those tasks that you prepared earlier in a new order, from the easiest task to the most complicated one on your piece of paper. So list your tasks from the easiest to the most difficult. And the easiest for you may be the quickest, or they may be the least intellectually taxing. Depends on your discipline and where you are in this story. So organise the tasks from the easiest to the most difficult. Right, okay, we've done our task orientation. Right now, we're going to switch to time orientation, your other column. So what I want you to do now is go down the list of every single task that you specified, and I want you to put a designated time next to it, how long it will take to complete. So in other words, what I want you to do is a predictive exercise. I want you to predict how long each of those tasks will take in time. And I want that prediction to be as accurate as it can be. And that's why the reason, by the way, that I made you make the task as small and clear as possible, so the designation of time could be clear and could be accurate. Right, so now we have a list of tasks and some time attached to them about how long they will take to finish. Cool, great, brilliant, wicked. What I want you to do now is look at your timetable for next week. Look at what's happening with your kids, with your partner, with paid work, with everything that's happening in your life, sport, leisure, all that stuff, and maybe go into your Microsoft calendar, see if there are any meetings there. So have a real sense about how your time is organised next week. And then what I want you to do is I want you to find 30-minute and or 60-minute and or 120-minute blocks of time. So there's your timetable. Here are blocks of time. And remember, 30 minutes matters a lot too. So don't waste the 30 minutes. If there's 30 minutes, use that. And then I want you to go back to your big bit of paper of task and time orientation and match one of those easy tasks to a slot or spot in your timetable for next week. So that task takes 30 minutes, that goes on Tuesday lunchtime. That task takes 2 hours, I've got space on Thursday afternoon. So transpose those tasks into the time that you have available. And can I say, this works incredibly well, okay, because it's fitting in with your schedule. So you might complete 5 tasks in a week, you may complete 10 tasks, you may complete 1 task. Remember, this works great if you're part-time or full-time. This works fantastic if you're incredibly busy and you have one 30-minute slot. At least you've got a way to use that 30-minute slot, okay, so it can fit in with your enrollment, your modality, and your life. But what I would ask is when you're doing that task in that designated time, I want you to work with intensity. I want you to give me everything. Don't have Facebook up, don't have your email up. If you're giving me 120 minutes or you're giving me 30 minutes, then bring it. All right, bring it. Give it to me hard, finish that task, work efficiently, work hard for me. And remember, your easiest tasks are finished first, and that will give you the sense of completion. And by the way, that's what the third column's for, the tick. So when you finish, you get that great sense of satisfaction by ticking your list. So as you move down the list, you're going, wow, this is actually working. So it gives you those micro achievements that allows you to keep going with the gig. So as you can see, what we're using here is time and task orientation, medieval and industrial ways of organising time to get that thesis finished. And how fundamentally appropriate is this for a post-Fordist university? So the great gift of this model is whatever time you have available, 30 minutes, 30 hours, this strategy will work for you, and you can relax and you can be calm because you can see the end in sight. These are the jobs to do. This is the time required to do them. This is my timetable. Let's do this. Bring it. Okay, so whether you're looking at finishing your thesis or your chapter, this strategy is one of many that we can use, but one that certainly does work and brings you back to control. And that's the priority. So good luck, Sue. Good luck to everyone in that final 3 months to submission. You are fantastic. And as always, I wish you love, light, and peace. Tea out.